Can you undo a keratin treatment? This is the question that I'm going to answer today. The short answer is yes. Actually, it's complicated. The answer really depends on why you're dissatisfied with your keratin treatment, which will give us a clue as to whether or not it can be undone. By the end of this video, you're going to end up with 1 out of 3 possible answers. Real quick before we do that, if you've never been here before, I'm Holland Morgan, known as Cosmo Dad. I am a cosmetologist and cosmetology educator based out of Austin, Texas. And if you haven't already, please like, share, subscribe, give me a comment, tell me what you think of this video. Any sort of interaction with you helps, and I'd love to see you for a ton more videos. I'm going to be referring to some of my previous videos during this one, so if you haven't seen them, go check them out too. Back to the question at hand. Can you undo a keratin treatment? So I recently had somebody comment on my How Keratin Treatments Work video. So this person replied, can I reverse my keratin treatment because it's completely straight? My hair feels brittle and limp. Who wouldn't want to undo that? Straight, brittle, limp. So really the core of whether or not a keratin treatment is reversible, we're just assuming you're unsatisfied with it and that your hair is curl-free, dry, and limp. This is going to be caused by one of 3 things. Either you weren't an ideal candidate for a keratin treatment, the keratin treatment was applied improperly, or you didn't actually get a keratin treatment. So we'll take them in order. A keratin treatment is essentially a temporary coating around the outside of the hair. Oh, she needs to be styled. She's had better days. It's essentially a long-term coating around the hair. Yes, it goes inside the hair a little bit, but it also does incredible things where it helps lock down the cuticle, smooth repair, act as a heat protector, and it can change the shape of the hair temporarily, typically around 3 to 6 months. No keratin treatment should ever make the hair feel dry, brittle, and limp. Unless your hair starts out with just the tiniest amount of texture, like these swatches here, how I have just this little bit of wave in there, I would expect a keratin treatment to potentially remove all of that wave. Anything more than that, they typically don't, nor do you necessarily want them to. But let's just say you started out with a little bit of wave, it totally removed them, you had very fine textured hair, I could see this making it feel limp. Not everybody's a candidate for a keratin treatment. And in this case, this temporary coating wears off in 3 to 6 months. If the keratin treatment was applied properly and you just weren't the ideal candidate for it, then when the keratin treatment wears out, your hair should be back to where it was when you started. One of the key ways to take care of a keratin treatment is to use a sodium chloride free shampoo. Using sodium chloride or salt in your shampoo can make that keratin treatment wear out faster. So typically we avoid sodium chloride when we're trying to make our keratin treatment last as long as possible. But if we're not interested in that and we want to accelerate it, then I would recommend switching back to your sodium chloride shampoo. Just your standard shampoo that has sodium chloride in the formula, most of them do, should sort of accelerate the fading process of the keratin treatment. That is, if you had fine hair with a small amount of wave and everything was done properly. If that's the case, then yes, keratin treatments are reversible. There are 2 other scenarios that would leave your hair feeling dry, brittle, and limp with all the curl removed after a keratin treatment that are unfortunately not reversible. Let's go with the lesser of 2 evils first. The first one is maybe the keratin treatment was applied improperly. Oftentimes with keratin treatments, over application can weigh down the hair. And so basically the layer of keratin is too thick. Also, they use very high heat. There are some keratin treatments that use temperatures up to 450 degrees and recommend up to 16 passes with a flat iron. That is a lot of heat on your hair. So if the keratin treatment was applied improperly, then your hair can sustain damage, which would account for making it feel brittle, dry, and limp. The keratin treatments that require the highest heat often allow for the largest sections during flat ironing. The lower heat applications tend to call for smaller sections. Sometimes the stylist is misinformed, gets confused, mixes up different keratin treatment procedures, and they might use high heat on teeny tiny sections. And this will overwhelm the treatment and end up damaging your hair. Or if it's over applied, it's less of a damage and more of like a buildup. It is possible that when done very, very wrong, a keratin treatment application can damage your hair. Once hair is damaged, it's damaged. We can try protein treatments, we can try bond builders like Olaplex, help sort of mitigate that damage, but unfortunately damage isn't entirely reversible. So once that hair's been damaged, it's going to be damaged, and there isn't necessarily a way to permanently undo that. So if your keratin treatment was over-applied or applied improperly, there's a chance you can get some of your old spring back, but there's probably been some damage done to your hair. There's some products that we can use in your hair to make it feel a little bit better, but mostly you're gonna have to wait on the grow out, which is about 6 inches a year. So if your hair is down to your waist, you're gonna wait a while before your hair feels good as new again, because you gotta get rid of all the old stuff. I'm deeply sorry if this happened to you. The third scenario is the possibility that the treatment you received was not actually a keratin treatment. It was something that was, we could say, deceptively marketed. We could say marketed in a misleading way to make both the consumer and the stylist, who is also a consumer, believe that this is a keratin treatment. There are some products out there that are thioglycolate-based relaxers. They don't work on the salt and the hydrogen bonds that I mentioned earlier. They work on the disulfide bonds in the hair, the permanent bonds of the hair. So thioglycolate relaxers permanently change the texture of the hair. So either you can go from curly to straight or from straight to curly, depending on the state that your hair starts out in and what chemicals you've had done before. But there are thioglycolate relaxers out there that might say keratin infused straightener or something like that, where it's kind of tricky and you have to actually read the label and understand your chemistry to see for sure if what you're doing is a straightener that's infused with keratin or a keratin treatment, which are two totally different things. Keratin treatments are not straighteners, nor are they meant to be permanent. Without even reading the label, a quick way to tell is if it smells like a permanent wave. Often they have a very sulfury or rotten eggy kind of smell. If your keratin treatment smells like rotten eggs, it's not a keratin treatment. It's a keratin infused relaxer. It's a relaxer. If that's what happened, then that's the worst case scenario, because your hair is now limp, dry, brittle, and the hair that had that treatment is going to permanently be that way because the disulfide bonds have been permanently changed and disrupted. They don't come back from that. You just have to wait for your new growth. So just a quick recap. If you are not the ideal candidate for a keratin treatment, your hair just got kind of overwhelmed by it. So your curl, you didn't have a lot of curl, your hair texture, the diameter of the individual hair is fine, then maybe the keratin treatment sort of overwhelmed your hair and it was just too much. Then switching away from the proper maintenance products, maybe adding a shampoo that's not intended for keratin treatments can help it wear out faster, and hopefully your hair will be closer to where you started. If the keratin treatment was over applied or the heat portion was overdone, then your hair may or may not come back from this, and you just kind of have to wait for it to wear out. Once again, you could probably switch from a sodium chloride free shampoo to something just normal, what you prefer, what makes your hair feel good. If the heat hasn't permanently changed your curl pattern, then your hair should feel back to normal within weeks to months. But if you or your stylist has fallen victim to some tricky marketing and has actually applied a permanent straightener instead of a keratin treatment, then that could account for the hair being dry, limp, and brittle, and it's going to stay that way, unfortunately. Thank you for watching. I've got a lot of new content coming up. We're going to do some color theory, some hair cutting theory. So thanks for coming, and I'll see you next time.